There's one thing that will forever change the way you sleep, and it's the softest 100% organic cotton sheets from Boll & Branch. You'll fall asleep faster, wrapped in the most luxurious comfort. You'll never sleep hot again with sheets that feel breathable to sleep in. You'll experience the purest softness on night one and feel your sheets get even softer with every wash. Discover the difference with 15% off your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com with code CUMULUS. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
Struggling to fall asleep? Meet the Ergo Pro Smart Base from Tempur-Pedic. Its gentle massage and relaxing sounds help calm your mind every night. Save up to $500 on select adjustable mattress sets at TempurPedic.com. On Breeze mattress sets only, lesser savings may apply.
Welcome back, everyone, to another great edition. This is the holiday edition of Funbelt Fun podcast because it is Memorial Day weekend. We're going to discuss later with our guest, who I'm not going to reveal now, but we'll discuss with our guest the best Memorial Day war movies to watch. But right now, we're going to discuss something that's even more pertinent to the Sun Belt, and that's the Sun Belt baseball tournament, which is just in our time, as we're recording now, has just concluded. Tibbs, who won that tournament?
Not Arkansas State.
No.
Not ULM.
No, ULM wasn't there. Hey, how about James Madison?
They got to be in the league first.
Oh, that's right. So maybe next year. Okay, go on.
Surprisingly, not Texas State.
Ooh. What about Troy?
Not Troy. Troy was a semifinalist.
Okay, yeah, Troy did well. Yeah.
But it was more importantly your favorite team, the Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns.
No, my favorite team, South Alabama.
Oh, okay. Then somebody's favorite team, Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns. Pretty impressive.
I did want the Cajuns to win, and I'll tell you why. And Shane, you may say, Jeremy, this is terrible logic. It's not going to work. And you can say that from the outside because you can kind of look and see that sometimes Sun Belt logic isn't the best logic. So you being new to the Sun Belt, you could probably sniff that out right away. But I'm thinking because the Cajuns win, that opens the door just slightly for a chance at 4 Sun Belt teams making the NCAA tournament. Am I crazy, Shane?
Yes.
No, I think that probably did it. I think the question is, at this point, will there be 6 new Sun Belt teams or future belt teams, or however you want to put it? Because will a couple of those Conference USA teams get in too? Like, I think, it could be huge for Sun Belt baseball going forward, this tournament.
We know Southern Miss is going in, right? We know that. Marshall's not getting in because they really blow at baseball at the moment. We don't think it's James Madison. So you're thinking maybe it's ODU, the most mysterious newbie in the Sun Belt?
Yeah, I'm going by, I think it was D1Baseball.com, one of their latest bracketologies. They had ODU as the last team in. So they're right there on the edge. They really could have used a win last night.
Yeah.
Didn't get it. But I think they're right there. It could be 6 of the 14 new Sun Belt teams, which is pretty incredible if you look at it that way. And maybe only 5. I don't think it'll be just 4, but it's Sun Belt baseball is looking incredible right now.
Tibbs, you're thinking, no way in hell the Sun Belt gets 4. You don't think that happens?
I don't. I think when Louisiana Lafayette won the conference tournament, I think that actually bumped out Coastal Carolina so that you're only going to see Texas State, Georgia Southern, and the Raging Cajuns in the postseason. I think it's a 3 bid. Still impressive that there's 3 teams in the postseason.
Oh, definitely. Coastal getting punted out of the tournament by Troy was a bit of a surprise. Troy's always kind of been that kind of team, though. They're always that team that doesn't stick to the script, kind of ruins everything for everybody. Coastal Carolina may be on the outside looking in. We'll have to see. I kind of posed that scenario on the Twitters, and it was met with a mixture of guffaws and that could happen. So I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see on Monday. I forget exactly what time. I think it's close to prime time they have the selection show, but we will see for sure then.
I think the more interesting thing is to see, do we have 2 Sun Belt teams hosting? We already know that Georgia Southern is going to be a host, but can Texas State, even though they lost in the semifinals, can they still host?
That's a good question. And here's another question I have to ask. At the beginning of the season, Tibbs, when we're just starting with baseball, when we're kind of sifting through the data, did we even think Georgia Southern was going to be a contender? Let alone now we're talking about them hosting.
No, even when I went to go see them live and in person, they were a good team, no doubt. But there was just nothing special about them. They just did fundamental baseball. They did the little things that they had to do to get wins. But there was definitely nothing that projected them to be a top 10 team or to be in this situation of making a lot of noise in the NCAA regional.
Do we worry about Georgia Southern after their performance in this game today, where they're up 5-0? Look like they were cruising, Tibbs. Look like they were just on their way to a Sun Belt championship, an unlikely Sun Belt championship, mind you, because we all believed, or well, we didn't foresee, we didn't have the sagacity to see it from the beginning that Georgia Southern was going to have this great baseball team. Should we be worried, though, that they gave up the lead, the 5-run lead, then gave up the 1-run lead in the 9th inning to end up falling to the Cajuns? Should we be worried about that for Georgia Southern? Does that tell us that there's something wrong with Georgia Southern?
I don't think it's anything wrong. I think that they coasted, assuming that they had already won the game before they actually won the game. And I think that this is hopefully a lesson learned, and that they keep the pedal down all 9 innings, maybe even all 10 innings, whenever they're in the NCAA regionals, to ensure that they come away with victories.
I think you also kind of got to look at, if they are hosting, the atmosphere there. That's going to be something that can kind of carry them through things a little bit. You know, you get a different response when somebody gets a couple runs back from you when you got your home crowd there than when you're on a neutral site like they were this weekend, which I have to think, covering some other regionals previously, that home crowd can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And I think Georgia Southern, I think that they have a pretty zesty fan base for baseball this year, just sort of checking in on them every now and then. They're really behind that baseball team. And I suspect, and I could be wrong about this, that they're just as surprised and probably really delighted with their Eagles baseball team, especially considering how hard it was in the football season, how their team just did not meet that Eagles expectations. Now they have a baseball team that the fans can rally behind. They've got a winner. Congratulations to the Eagles. Also, congratulations, though, to the Cajuns, who all year kind of, is it fair to say they struggled, Tibbs? There seemed like early in the season they weren't quite the Cajuns, but then they really seemed to sort of snowball at the end of the season.
They were peak and valley. You remember they opened up with a 2 of 3 win series against UC Irvine. And so we were like, okay, maybe this team's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then they would lose a midweek game to somebody that they had no business losing to. And you're like, okay, maybe that was just a fluke. And then they would go out and beat somebody else that they weren't supposed to hang with. And you're back on the mountain there with them. So does it surprise me that they won the conference tournament? Not at all. Would it have surprised me if they would have went one and done? Not at all.
Yeah, absolutely. But, to me, the Cajuns are just one of those almost professional ball players in the Sun Belt, in that just like Coastal Carolina, they have this great history for baseball, and they're always going to figure it out at some point in the season. And Coastal seemed to have the same trajectory, Tibbs. They struggled at the beginning of the season, and suddenly they seem to get it all together at the end. I know you don't think Coastal ends up making it. Shane, you were looking at the Baseball America or whatever metrics. Where did they have Coastal Carolina?
I will have to try to look that back up. I don't remember.
Dang it, Shane.
I believe they had 4 in. So I got to see where they were. Let me look it up.
All right.
So while he looks that up, a cool thing that Louisiana Lafayette's Twitter account posted.
All right.
The final out of the Cajuns' 36th win of the season came at 436. And for those not in the know, 36, the number of the late great Tony Robichaux, their head coach that unfortunately passed in the offseason.
Wow.
Tell me that doesn't give you goosebumps.
Yes, I have got goosebumps. That is an incredible coincidence that just so happened to fall for the Cajuns. Congratulations to the Cajuns. I know that probably hurts you a little in the inside, Tibbs. You being a citizen of ULM, seeing the success of the Cajuns as once again they have this great tournament. Although you got to admit, ULM didn't have that bad a tournament. Got through that elimination game.
Got through the elimination game, was able to have a brief lead there with Texas State until just kind of late errors and issues came about and, kept the Warhawks from trying to pull off that upset. Am I jealous of what Louisiana Lafayette's done? No, not at all. I think it brings a lot of attention to the Sun Belt as a whole, and I think it really helps to further the league as a whole.
Shane, have you got the new data?
Yes. So it's d1baseball.com. And they had Coastal going to North Carolina as a 3 seed.
Ooh. All right. So, okay.
I mean, I think this was from last night. There's been some other teams probably steal some bids here recently, but they're pretty high on all 4 Sun Belt teams really like going in as far as at-large stuff goes. Like their note at the beginning of the article was if Louisiana Lafayette wins today, that makes 4 Sun Belt teams. Was kind of, what they were going with.
Tim, you're kind of the historian here. Your memory seems to go way back. Have we ever had 4 teams in the NCAA tournament?
No, the most I can remember is ever having 2.
A couple of years ago, I remember for writing for Underdog Dynasty, talking about Sun Belt baseball. And I was excited for the prospect of maybe 2 teams getting into the NCAA tournament. I was looking at the numbers. It looked like 2 teams could get in. I think they ended up getting 2 teams, but that was like a big deal. Now we're talking about 4 and then 2 newbies coming in. Also, so it's kind of like it would be like having 6 get in, and that would be just incredible, which makes everybody from JMU to ULM to Arkansas State have to try that much harder, put that much more resources into it, put that much more effort into it to keep up with these teams. Because yes, I would love to be part of the Sun Belt baseball story, and I would hate for our teams to be left out of that. But by the way, Shane, I'm reading a new biography. You know what it is?
Oh yes, I saw that. Yeah, you're reading about the little
James
guy.
Madison. Yeah. And I'm so far a little disappointed to see that he's never touched a football in his life.
Yeah, I don't know what position he would have played. What was he, like 5'4", something like that?
He was a diminutive man with big ideas, sure. But it's just like I was just a little bit almost like buyer's remorse on JMU that James Madison isn't founded off a guy who could, at least hit a 3-pointer. But I don't think he had that game either.
Yeah, I don't know what games he would have been playing a lot of. It was a
what he seems like a bumper pool guy to me.
Maybe. I've been to his house, not too far away from here. There wasn't a basketball goal in the driveway or anything like that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to think of that guy. But
maybe he played highlight or bocce ball. I don't know. I don't know what maybe James said. It was kind of funny. I'm reading this biography, which is like one of the premier biographies of James Madison. It just blatantly says, we don't know anything about his childhood.
So he could have been an All-American Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah, he could have been like a great baseball player. We'd never know. Except, the invention of baseball sort of came after his death. But other than that,
details.
Yeah, he could have been a fine athlete. We know George Washington was a good athlete. He was known to be a good athlete. I don't know if James Madison. All right, and before we talk a little bit more about baseball, Tibbs, I know I'm all over the place.
No, not you.
I need like an agenda. If only somebody every week took the time to put together an agenda for us.
It would be the craziest damn thing ever.
Memorial Day, a lot of barbecue goes on. A lot of people get together, they'll have a beer, they have barbecue. What is the best thing to barbecue on Memorial Day? Or grill. Let's not say barbecue. That makes it, that's a little too specific. What's the best thing to grill on Memorial Day?
How can you not love grilling some form of dead cow, whether it be steaks, brisket? It's the best. In fact, I'm ready to go to dinner now. But I am committed to the show, and since we still have a guest to bring on,
Yeah.
we still have more to talk about. I just have to sit here and think in the back of my mind about brisket and steaks.
Yeah, if we're just grilling, throwing a steak
Now-
on a grill sounds like the best idea to me. I don't know. Given our
You
different,
guys,
given the geography of everyone here, we probably don't want to get into a barbecue discussion because that might have to be its own episode, like before we really dive into barbecue. So,
Kate, I am accusing you and Thibodeaux both of being East Coast elites for suggesting steak on Memorial Day when it should be hot dogs and hamburgers. That is the right answer
All right.
for Memorial Day.
depends on
The good old
if you're having a
American-
big party, you're not throwing steaks on for everybody. You just got the family around. I'll spend a little bit more money on some steaks if it's just me and my kids and my family. But
Wouldn't that be a cool move, though?
can't
Wouldn't
be.
that be, wouldn't that be a cool move, though? If like you had like a party, like you had 30 people over, and you bring out the tray of meat, and everybody's like, "Oh, here comes the hamburgers," and it's actually filet mignon, and you're just like, "Oh yeah, I just happen to have these hanging out. Yeah, these $40 cuts of meat." Wouldn't that be great?
We're getting way off topic here, but I'm not even caught up on this show. But I was watching a little bit of that. What's it called? We Own This City on HBO about the Baltimore cops and everything. And like one of the ways they found out or kind of like dawned on them that the cops were dirty was because they were like grilling steaks and lobster and stuff at their parties. so that just popped into my head when you're talking about that. So yeah. That was almost like that. That was almost a scene. Like the guy brought out the cooler with the steaks and the lobster and everything when the other guys were doing
Funbelt podcast.
Crab legs and
Funbelt podcast will never be busted for any type of fraud in any way because you won't see us grilling steaks.
No, it's that dollar store, whatever it is that says meat.
Tibbs, do we have anything else to discuss before we get our guest in?
No, bring him on.
Thibodeaux, you know who we have in our green room?
There's no telling because, like I said, you don't lock the door, and that's how we wound up with Shane.
No. Here's how we get people in the green room. We put it in a wedge of cheese. We leave the door open, and whoever comes in for the cheese has to be a guest on our show. And
Wasn't that a cartoon where there was a box also and a stick that you had to pull it?
No. We don't even need that. We just need the cheese. And guess who took the cheese today? On Memorial Day.
There is no telling.
Scott Watkins. He is a reporter who covers Southern Miss. And as you know, we've been trying to get to know some of the newbies for the Sun Belt for a little bit. Shane has done a good job keeping us up with James Madison.
And Old Dominion.
He's been our only Old Dominion source. We've talked a little bit to the guys from Marshall. Those guys are great. Now we've got Scott here, who'll give us an inside scoop of Southern Miss, Southern Miss happens to be one of college baseball's best teams right now. And we're going to hear a little bit about that. Scott, can you tell us a little bit about Southern Miss baseball?
I guess this is a good segue. Yeah, no, they for a time there in April, they looked like the very best team in baseball. They won like 15 straight games. They have not had the best May. They've not had the best May. They've fallen apart a little bit. Didn't have a great tournament. But at the end of the day, their body of work right now throughout the entire season, they took down a lot of good teams. And they played a Conference USA schedule that was really good. So it looks like they might end up with just inside the top 16 or really just outside the top 8. I think that D1 baseball has a number 10. But yeah, they're looking good. They look like they might host. I think that it's a good thing that Louisiana won today because that means more Sun Belt representation as well in this year's tournament. So
Conference USA has had a pretty good college baseball season this year, including ODU, which we hadn't really paid attention to in baseball until I started looking at the standings and saw they finished this regular season in third place. How many people from CUSA do you think we'll see in the tournament?
we'll see, of course, Southern Miss. We'll see Old Dominion. We'll see Louisiana Tech. Might see UTSA. That's kind of a bubble thing, but at least 3 for sure.
So one of the things we were talking about earlier before you came in, we are talking about how some of the best teams in baseball that they normally don't win they don't always win their conference tournament. They seem to be kind of just sort of getting themselves organized for the NCAA tournament. Do you feel like maybe that was the case for Southern Miss?
I don't want to think so, but nobody wants to take with that kind of attitude. I think going into the tournament, Southern Miss was squarely on the bubble of hosting, and they very much wanted to host. So I think they won 2 games in there, and that's good. I think, as you mentioned, it's hard to win the conference tournament in baseball, just like it is in basketball. I don't think you can knock teams too much for losing out early in their conference tournaments, really, because you've got 30 games that you played in conference that I think mean a lot more. It's just once they got to the elimination games, the ball bounced a different way. So, I think that the committee is going to look at what they did in April and May when it comes to hosting.
So do you think that's across the board, not just a Conference USA thing, that what you do in regular season is a lot bigger, better than what you do in the tournament? I mean, the tournament can definitely make your season. If you're, say, like a ULM in the Sun Belt, they were a 10 seed coming in, they run the table, obviously they get that automatic bid. But do you feel that the tournament can't necessarily hurt you, it can only help you?
For certain teams, it's all about context. It's all about context. I think if you looked up at like a team like Arkansas, falling apart all through May, they lost a lot of games. Only wins came against like Illinois, Chicago, and didn't have a good tournament. And they're probably not going to host a regional for the first time in like forever. But that's their own context. I think with Southern Miss is they have won games here in May. It's been a bumpy May. They've struggled. They had a patch there, but they recovered before the end of the regular season. Won some games. I think they swept Middle Tennessee, who was top 60 RPI at the time. And so I think the context there is that for Southern Miss, you win 1, you win 2 in the tournament, and the committee is going to look at you favorably. Whereas if you were out of there, day 1, that would hurt you. I think the context is important because for some teams, like you said, you need to run the table. You need to do well. The conference tournament is all you have, really, when it comes to the selection committee.
How much does the selection committee, when they're looking at conference tournament versus regular season, how much do they kind of just look at like how you decide to use your pitching staff? Like, is there some common sense involved in that? I mean, because obviously you show what your pitching staff is capable in those weekend series, and then you might not use them the same way in a conference tournament, depending on what's on the line for you. Do you think there's common sense with that when it comes to the selection committee?
I would hope so. I'm not in that room. I would sure hope so because that was Southern Miss's strength going into the conference tournaments. They were a lot better in the bullpen and in the rotation than they were last year, even though they had a couple All-Americans last year. They somehow got better. Last year they had 1 bullpen guy that was good. That was it. This year they got 4 or 5, and they just got rocked against UTSA. And that's not something that happened at all really during the regular season. So I think they would have some common sense. There's the scheduling, of course, is tightened. You got to play 2 games in one day. You got to play 3 games in 40 hours. I think all that is going to be taken into account. But at the same time, the team you're playing, they got to do the same thing. So I mean, at all angles, I think the committee is going to understand what teams have, the arms that they have. They'll look at how those arms did, both in the tournament and in the regular season. But I still think what they did in late February or in March and April and early May, that's going to be most important.
So we all know that there were some definitely hard feelings there between Southern Miss, Conference USA, for the football aspect, maybe even a little bit on the basketball side. Do you feel that kind of trickled over into baseball as well?
I don't know about hard feelings, but I can tell you that Southern Miss fans on sites were very, very pro Old Dominion the entire tournament. There's a group of people in right field. They sit up in this thing they call the treehouse, and they have a horn. I always thought the horn belonged to Southern Miss whenever they hit a home run. The horn belongs to a group of fans. It's a train horn, just like Georgia State has when they score touchdowns. And they blow that horn for home runs and for walk-off hits. And when Old Dominion beat Louisiana Tech in the semifinal round to force a game 2, they blew that horn for Old Dominion, which has never happened for anybody else. So I don't know if there are hard feelings against Southern Miss, but I know that the Southern Miss fans are very happy. And they're very happy that they and Old Dominion are getting out of there.
All right. Yeah. That's what I like. That's what I like to hear, Dusty.
Sons of love.
That's right. Now, and are we getting the same energy from James Madison, Shane?
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, we talked about it a little bit last week, how it'll be interesting to see like how JMU and ODU worked so hard to get in together. We're kind of step by step through the whole process of realignment in it together. And then, they'll go back to hating each other here pretty soon. Like, I mean, I don't know, it's July 1st when you kind of flip the switch and like it's all official, and then they can go back to actually being real rivals and everything. Cause like there's no love lost really in the history of those two schools. And then they somehow put that aside to get into the same conference here. So that's kind of an interesting aspect that I'm waiting to see just, how intense.
When does the honeymoon end? When does the honeymoon between the Sun Belt and the new Sun Belt end? That's the question.
Oh yeah.
Probably, I would think, what, to me, it always start the end will probably be the moment when Sun Belt has to play Sun Belt in conference play. That's when things start getting a little bit angry. Usually the first week of the season, I'm all pro anybody. You know what? I want everybody in the Sun Belt to win their games. But as soon as it starts getting down to the nitty gritty. So one of the questions we've had, Scott, is what the hell's going on with ODU? We just haven't heard from them much. Do you have a sort of scouting report on ODU football, for instance?
ODU football, no. I've kind of taken this like one sport at a time because there's just so much heading my way, and I think most people know this. I'm fairly new on the professional beat. Starting in November, so it's really been like basketball was first, and then baseball, and then here in like a couple weeks, all my attention will go to Sunbelt football. But no, I have no idea what's going on the Old Dominion front. And I would agree they're kind of quiet. Like I see stuff from James Madison all the time. Yes. I never hear from Old Dominion. I hear from Old Dominion baseball, of course, but football, nothing. Absolutely nothing.
They're the unicorn of the Sun Belt. Do they exist?
I'll say this on Friday, September 2nd, I think I will be the biggest Old Dominion fan I've ever been in my entire life when they play Virginia Tech at home.
I think we all will be.
Absolutely.
I might even go to Burger King and get a crown.
Well, wait a second. Why this hatred for Virginia Tech?
I don't hate Virginia Tech. I love the Sun Belt. Big Sun Belt guy. Got the.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, Jeremy. He tries to play it off like he's new to all this. He's an old South Alabama guy, so he knows some Sun Belt.
No. Whoa. Troy.
Troy. My bad.
Oh,
I knew it was a lower Alabama.
Whoa.
Let's talk a little bit about Southern Miss then. Let's talk about a little bit Southern Miss football. Have you even begun to think about Southern Miss football yet?
Well, yeah, because I had to cover spring. I had to cover spring football, and they had a good transfer class, so people are excited. And this is the second year of Will Hall. Football is all year round, really. So, when it comes to my own beat, of course, yeah, I know what's going on. They'll be better. How much better, I don't know, but they will be better. I mean, it doesn't take much to go from the bottom up, so they will be better.
Is that kind of the feeling for Southern Miss football right now, that they're at the bottom, they hit rock bottom, and now
especially not for Southern Miss fans, because they did go 0-12 in like the last decade at some point. So certainly not the bottom. They went 3-9 last year, but it's more in reference to how the offensive line played. And every single metric you can grade the offensive line, they were dead last in the conference, or in the country. I'm sorry, in the entire country last year. And so, from the offensive standpoint, you really are starting from the very bottom. In order to win any FBS games last year, they had to put Frank Gore Jr. at quarterback for 2 games, and that's the only reason they won the last 2 games.
So you talk about the on the field product there. When fans go to Hattiesburg, what can they expect to see at the Rock?
Well, I have seen nothing yet, personally, so I couldn't tell you. I tell you what, this team, they love their coach, and that's all that really matters. You can tell when you've got a coach that the players rally behind. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that's a bad thing. That's yet to be seen here in this situation. But I think you're going to see, a team that is willing to fight. And that's something that you saw at the end of last year. That's not cliche. I'm not trying to throw you the coach speak. I'm not trying to throw you, the basic stuff that you hear anywhere. That's all based on the last 2 games. I mean, you got a team that was 1-8, I believe. Their season was over. They have nothing to play for. Will Hall could easily put in the youngest players on the roster, give them some playing time. They came up with an entirely new formation in an effort to win ball games, and it worked. And that tells me that this team and this coaching staff, they're willing to get creative and they're willing to fight, even when there's nothing to fight for. So that's what I have to tell you about the Southern Miss football program right now.
So you said you did get to watch some basketball this past year. Not a good year on the hardwood there for the Eagles. What's it going to take for this team to really kind of right the ship there? They played some Sun Belt schools. They played Louisiana Lafayette. They played South Alabama. Not even really competitive in those games. What do you feel is it going to take for them to kind of flip the switch?
A while back, I can't remember who it was, but I said, it was Troy's defense coordinator. It was after his first year, Brandon Hall. I said that he needed to be let go. And after that, about a year later, I told myself I would never make that. I would never do that again. I would never call for anybody's job again. But in all honesty, if Southern Miss basketball is going to get better, they're not going to do it under their current coach. And it's such a tough thing to say because he's Southern Miss through and through. As far as a person goes, he's the most likable guy on campus. He coached the 3 worst seasons in Southern Miss basketball history, and it's a shocker that he was brought on for year number 4. They're going to have to move forward without him. That's the only thing. They went 7-26 last year. They've gotten worse every year under him, under Coach Ladner. I don't want to call for anybody's job, but they're not getting any better under Ladner. They're not bringing fans to the arena. They're not competitive, as you said, and there's no hope. There are no signs that anything is improving. So I'm surprised that he's getting his 4th year on his contract.
Wow, that gives me I'm going to shed a tear. Do you think that there's any positives that whenever they come into the Sun Belt that they'll maybe have a little bit of a rally, having not been exposed fully to this conference schedule before?
That's part of the reason why I was so surprised they didn't move forward, because this is the opportune time. I mean, I can't see why you want to go into a new conference and a new league schedule with a coach that you have. Yeah, that was somebody else's dog that we're watching. Sorry about that. I can't see why. I can't see why you move forward with this coach after 3 terrible years and coach the first year in the Sun Belt with this guy. I don't think it's going to mean much. There's no secret. It's not a secret that the Sun Belt Conference basketball schedule is a little bit lighter than the Conference USA one. No secret there. But I don't think it really matters much because, as you said, they played the South Alabamas, they played Louisiana, and they're not there. They're not competitive. They're not at the level where they can compete even at the slightest Division I level, really.
Do you feel that like maybe the future head coach is already on staff though of someone like Clarence Witherspoon or someone like that, or do you feel that it's going to be a complete overhaul of the program?
I think you go to someone on staff when you're a good team. I feel like if you're winning 20 games, you stick with somebody. If you're winning 7 games a year, you won 9 games, 8 games, 7, why would you move to somebody who's a part of that?
That's a good point. Yeah. You kind of want to clean house when it's time to clean house, and moving in program wouldn't be the right move. I think there are a lot of Sun Belt programs that are probably thinking the same way you're thinking. Why did we go ahead and extend our coach? I know Arkansas State has had a little bit of that just recently. So let me ask you this, Watkins. Let me just go ahead and just switch this totally out of the realm. It's Memorial Day weekend. Yeah, we've all been like having our beers and our barbecue. But a tradition at my house is to watch old World War II movies. What is your favorite World War II movie for Memorial Day?
World War II? Does it have to be specifically World War II?
It doesn't have to be World War II.
Because that movie that came out a couple years ago, 1917, that's one of my favorite war movies ever. And that's World War One.
That's World War One. Yeah.
That may be cliche. I don't know if 1917 is like too mainstream. I don't know. But that's easily like one of my very favorites.
Shane, I need you to weigh in on this. Scott started off with a really good movie. Can you top that?
I'm kind of a child of the 80s, early 90s when all the Vietnam movies were coming out. So that's kind of where my mind goes first. Maybe something like Platoon or I don't know. Like
great sound.
I started with Platoon. That one, like Full Metal Jacket. That's another one.
So you're not looking for uplifting World War movies, like well, neither one of you have. So Tibbs, come on, rescue this. Do something. Give me the ultimate Memorial Day war movie.
How can you go wrong not watching the Joker in Full Metal Jacket? That is the epic ultimate Memorial Day movie.
See, all of you guys are way off.
Oh, I've got a newer one. I've got a Inglorious Bastards. Right. That's one. That's
okay. All right, that's a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm telling you, before there was Inglorious Bastards, there's another movie out there that was just as fun.
Are you going to say like Tropic Thunder?
No, Kelly's Heroes. You ever seen this movie? It's got Don Rickles. It's got Donald Sutherland. It's got Telly Savalas.
Did you have to watch it on a projector?
No. Kelly, hey, Watkins, have you ever watched Kelly's Heroes?
No.
Shane, have you ever watched Kelly's Heroes?
I don't think I've seen it.
Thibodeaux, have you seen Kelly's Heroes?
No.
Oh, Jesus Christ. All right, I need all of you guys to like go on to like, I don't know, HBO Max. They have all the TCM movies. Go find Kelly's Heroes. That's your homework assignment tonight. For Memorial Day, watch Kelly's Heroes. It's a war movie, but it's also a gold heist. So you should check it out. It's really good. Scott Watkins, thanks for joining us on the show, having a little rum and Coke with us. And we will see you later, especially when football season comes and we need your penetrating insight.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
So a normal all over the place interview there with another guest there. Scott Watkins talking about Southern Miss. Jeremy left us too, Shane. So it's just the two of us hanging out here for the last segment of the show. What do you think there of Southern Miss? Do you feel that they can kind of right the ship and kind of represent the Sun Belt once they kind of get in and established in the league?
I think so. I mean, it's just, I look at them, I look at, Jeremy just left us, but Arkansas State, like these programs that have proved it over history that they have what it takes to win in football. Like, I feel like they're going to get back. It's just a matter of, I don't know if we're going to see any dynasties in the Sun Belt because everybody is putting in the investment to try to win right now. And there's so many good programs. Like, I don't see Southern Miss staying down like they are. There's too much history. There's too much of a fan base. There's too much of people who want to see that program win for the not to turn it around eventually.
I think with the new NCAA rule also where you can oversign the 25 to try to get your scholarship numbers back up or your roster numbers back up, I think that's going to be where you see a lot of these teams that have been down really right the ship. Because as it stood before, when you were limited to 25, you were never going to get caught up on players to get your roster filled back up with talent. Now you actually have a fighting chance to get that depth going, get the guys that you need to actually be competitive.
I mean, especially when, you can do it through transfers now too, like as opposed to you've seen programs go through the cycle where they're trying to build, they're bringing in some good recruits, they're freshmen, they're not going to contribute for 2 years, and then the coach gets fired and you're starting all over again. You maybe don't see that as much going forward because, like you said, you can oversign more than 25 and you can bring in guys that can play right away. The turnaround should be quicker for a lot of programs.
I'm definitely looking forward to see where, when this preseason all Sunbelt team or Sunbelt rankings comes out, kind of how the new guys shake out. Obviously, you would think that someone like a Marshall is going to be in the mix of things right away, although I know that they had some guys leave. But I'm just anxious to see where do these new teams kind of fit in at, not knowing exactly, are they ready for this jump? Is James Madison truly ready for this jump? Is Old Dominion, as much as we joke of them being kind of the unicorn of not knowing anything about them, what do we really know about them? And are they really ready to compete in FBS and one of the high-end G5 leagues?
Yeah, I mean, just from a JMU point of view, I think they're ready to compete. They're going to be competitive. Whether or not they're going to win a lot of games in the first year kind of remains to be seen. There's some question marks. They've got a new quarterback, Colorado State transfer, Todd Centeo. Just how does he fit in? Like, he's a guy who has made some big plays in his career. He also throws a lot of interceptions. Does he improve on that and, kind of carry this offense? There's some question marks for JMU, but there's also talent, there's depth. And like we said, they're making this jump ready to go from day one as far as like having a full roster, an FBS size roster. Like a lot of teams that have made the transition, it took 2 years. But like we were talking about before with being able to oversign, being able to bring in transfers, plus they had the COVID year last year where they could have extra guys. They were ready. That was just sort of like a bit of, if there was any silver lining to COVID, that was one thing for JMU was they already had more than the FCS limit. So I think they're ready to compete. Whether they're ready to win a lot of close games, that remains to be seen.
I think that the conference as a whole also, they wrapped up their spring meetings this past week as well. They're definitely committed to having the league continue to grow and shine. To me, one of the big things, obviously, they committed to keeping the East-West divisions in football, something that we had talked about previously was huge because that was the big reason that you expanded and got the teams that you wanted for the Sunbelt Conference. If there were no divisions, I really don't think Marshall's coming in. I don't know about Old Dominion, James Madison. I don't know if they're making that jump to the Sunbelt if there's no divisions. So it was good to see that they're keeping the East-West and we'll still have true divisional champions to battle out in a conference championship game.
Yeah, and I think that was the right move. And I could see a scenario where someday, depending on how the next few years play out, as far as how good the Sun Belt gets, what the playoff looks like, things like that. Maybe there's a scenario someday down the line where you just take the top 2 ranked teams and put them in a championship game. But I feel like you've got to keep the division structure for the scheduling at the very least. And if you do, then it almost seems better to have the division champions play each other. But like I said, I think the scheduling aspect of it has to stay, for the foreseeable future for the Sun Belt, because like you said, that's a lot of the reason teams chose the Sun Belt over other options during this whole realignment.
When we talked with Scott, we mentioned basketball as well. That was another topic that was brought up in the spring meetings. The ADs really made a commitment to improve the scheduling, improving basketball on the men's and women's basketball side, because right now everyone just wants the easy wins. They don't necessarily want those tough games that you may or may not win. They just want to kind of pad the stats, pad the attendance, and play the middle of nowhere states in order to help the bottom line. But that doesn't really help the conference as a whole when you're trying to get that at-large bid, or even when you're winning the conference tournament there in Pensacola, that you're automatically going to be a 16 seed, or you're going to Dayton for the play in the first 4, as opposed to the conference having a strong enough net ranking that you're getting a a 12, an 11, a 10 seed to really give yourself a fighting chance.
This is something I'm hoping to write about here in the next week or two. Been trying to talk to some of the coaches and everything around the league is, when you look at it, football is in a great place. We were talking about it. It's, maybe 6 of these 14 new teams in the baseball tournament. We've seen multiple bids in softball. Men's soccer is going to be one of the best 2 or 3 leagues. Why can't you start talking about what it takes to get 2, maybe 3 basketball teams into the tournament, let alone not being a 16 seed. Like, if you can do it in all these other sports, how important is it to do it in basketball where there's actually money on the line? Like, you're talking about millions of dollars. If you look at the Mountain West, this past NCAA tournament, they had 4 teams in, didn't win a game in the tournament. They're still going to get $2 million out of that. Like, it's a huge deal if you can get that second team. It's a even bigger deal if you get a third team, which that's down the line before you even really start talking about that. But if you can do it in other sports, why can't you do it in men's and women's basketball if you're the Sun Belt?
And that's really a big reason why I've always been a bigger fan of the NIT and the C-level tournaments, is because it's matchups that you actually care about and that you have a fighting chance to actually pull off that win. You're not going in as the 16th seed playing number 1 Duke. While it's exciting that you get to play Coach K in his final game or whatever, who cares if you're just going to get absolutely curb stomped? I would much rather go to those lower level C-level tournaments and you're playing surely a Sam Houston State or someone like that, but at least it has a regional interest and you have a good chance to win the game.
Yeah, and you froze up on me a little bit here before, so I missed part of that. But yeah, like you said, winning games is the huge thing for the Sun Belt right now. You're not going to turn things around unless you start winning games. That's kind of where it all begins. And, playing teams you can beat, playing them at home, it's all going to be part of the process of, building the basketball league up where everything else is.
Exciting news and kind of timely there in the AD spring meetings as well. We're going to see more baseball, more softball on the ESPN Plus platform moving forward. It won't be just the conference schedule. It'll also be some non-conference games as well as all of the Sunbelt softball games rather. Whereas before we only saw maybe 1 game a week, we should be able to see at least 1 series a week out of that. So exciting times there with the ESPN partnership.
Yeah. And maybe that's part of the reason we're having the discussion we are about how many teams get into the NCAA tournament when it comes to baseball, is just exposure helps. I mean, sometimes, just whether or not you've seen a team on your screen makes a difference. Like if you're on that selection committee, and more games available for people to watch can only help your league, just as far as, exposure and, your reputation. JMU coming out of the CAA, nobody sees those games. Those teams could be just as good as anybody else, but nobody sees them play. And it's kind of like, the tree falling in the forest. Did it happen?
So another great episode there, Shane. So time for plugs, promos, parting shots. What do you have?
I'll just again plug dnronline.com, where you can read a lot about JMU, but there's going to be more Sunbelt content coming that should be interesting for pretty much all fans of the entire conference as this transition continues.
My parting shot, the shot heard around the world, where Tommy Phan smacked Jock Peterson over a fantasy football. We've all been there. We've all wanted to do it, but come on, dude. Why are you going to do it, especially in the limelight of being MLB, where there's cameras all around you and everything else? He's just an idiot. What else can I say?
How long must have that been stewing in his mind for him to do that, like you said, in front of the whole world, when you could go to the clubhouse and talk to him about it. I mean, you could do it during batting practice. You could do it
in the off season. You could do it whenever.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, but hey, people are talking about Major League Baseball, so maybe it was actually a good thing.
Always. It's always a good thing, when I guess you can get some kind of press off of it.
Yeah.
So for Shane of the Daily News Record, I'm Dusty Thibodeaux, Warhawk Report. Jeremy Harper of HowlRaiser.com was with us. And we look forward to talking next week, where we will have the unicorn, finally. The monarchist from Old Dominion will be joining us to talk about Old Dominion.
Is hot sleep keeping you up? The Tempur-Pedic Breeze mattress pulls heat away from your body, so it feels up to 10 degrees cooler. Save up to $500 on select adjustable mattress sets at TempurPedic.com. On Breeze mattress sets only. Lesser savings may apply.